Hey, Slater Crusaders, America is the greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here. Let's try to do this. I want to break this down as neatly as possible. We'll see how it goes. If nothing else, the number one thing to take away from all this is that everything we're seeing today, none of it just came out of nowhere, right? There's been a philosophical foundation being laid for this for decades. You could date it back to Marx, mid-1800s. You can go a little further than that if you like. But we'll call Marx in the mid-1800s, the Frankfurt School in the 1930s in Germany, the American universities in about the 50s, certainly the 60s plus, and then here we are today. So the kindling's been laid for decades, and now it's just starting to be lit on fire. That's the most important thing to know. This didn't come out of nowhere, which means it's not just a flash in the pan. This is all very purposeful. So we're gonna do a little philosophy 101 broad overview here in about 10 minutes. So we'll see how it goes. This analysis comes from Paul Moroney. So in philosophy, there are 5 core questions that are asked. First, I think we have a nice little chart about this so you can visualize this. First, what is the nature of reality? Second, how do we know the things we know? Third, what does it mean to be human? Number 4, how should I live my life? And number 5, how should we organize society? So those are the 5 questions. So to answer each question, there's a sub-discipline of philosophy to answer each of it, right? So the first is metaphysics. So what's the nature of reality? Well, that's metaphysics. The second, how do we know the things we know? That's epistemology. What does it mean to be human? That's a study in human nature. How should I live my life? That's ethics. And then how should we organize society? That's politics. Okay, so you got 5 big questions in philosophy and then 5 subcategories to answer each of the questions. For the sake of our 9 minutes remaining here, we're just gonna go over 3 major eras that I think are noteworthy. We can call them different things. We'll call them, you could call it pre-Enlightenment, Enlightenment, post-Enlightenment. I'll call them pre-modern, then Enlightenment, and then postmodern. And that's where we are today. So you got your pre-modern first. So the first question is, what is the nature of reality? So pre-modern, so everything before the 1700s. That's important to know, so timeline-wise. The Enlightenment's about the 1700s. So anything pre-Enlightenment. First question, what's the nature of reality? Well, you have the natural realm, and then you have the supernatural realm. So you have humans on earth, God in heaven, God and angels in heaven, and then the devil down below. Right? That's the nature of reality. That's the metaphysics. How do we know what we know? You got the Bible. Now, there's a ton here I'm skipping over, super broad overview, but for the sake of this conversation, the proof of what we know is because the Bible says so. Third, what does it mean to be human? Well, man is created in the image of God, and you are born with original sin. And then everything progresses from there. Number 4 is ethics. How should you live your life? You should live your life in a very altruistic way. You should serve and love others, serve your neighbor, your church, and God. Those are the ethics. And then politics, well, back then you had mostly kings protecting the people working for the king in exchange for the protection. That was the political makeup. Okay, so that was pre-modern philosophy. Then came the Enlightenment. So all the 1700s, by the time our Constitution was ratified, 1791 or 89, 91, all 5 of these questions had very different answers. So first, the nature of reality, metaphysics. The Enlightenment, there is no God. There is no God. All we have is the natural world. There is no supernatural at all. Second, how do we know what we know? Well, it used to be from the Bible, but right, so we moved away from that. There's no faith or mysticism anymore. So we moved away from faith and mysticism into reason and objectivity. There was a commitment that universal truths exist, but that they can only be realized through logic. And the technical word is empirical inquiry. So empirical means you can see, feel, touch, hear, smell, right? Your senses. But this is good. This is like the beginning of science and scientific inquiry. So that was the epistemology. Human nature, this is totally different. Instead of being born with original sin, Rousseau came in and said, no, tabula rasa, blank slate. So you're not born in any innate way at all. You're born entirely a blank slate, and you are created by the experiences around you. And also, everything is a social construct. There's nothing innate about anything in any way. Number 4, ethics. So way more individualism here. Every person has autonomy, is sovereign, has moral agency. This led to individual rights and private property rights, et cetera, which then led to our political movements, constitutionalism, republicanism, capitalism, right? Because now you have individual rights, private property, right, capitalism. So I know I'm blowing through this, but that was Enlightenment, right? 5 very different answers to those 5 very important questions. Now we have postmodernism, also known as anti-Enlightenment. And this is where we are today. So first, metaphysics. How are we doing on time? We're doing good. Metaphysics, the nature of reality. So postmodernists, for sure, don't believe in, well, I was to say they don't believe in the supernatural. I say they don't believe in God, but they believe in like crystals, maybe, or like tarot cards and stuff like that, right? But the twist for postmodernists is there's no supernatural, but there's also no natural world. All questions about reality are a waste of time. There is nothing that is real. Second, how do we know the things we know? Well, there's no Bible, certainly, but also there's no logic or science. In fact, because there's no existing reality, there's no objective knowledge to even be had. Everything is subjective. This is why you get this talk that we've done recently about the decolonizing of the sciences and of math, and how math is a social construct and math is a Western tool of oppression. And how, remember we played the clip from the girl in South Africa who said we need to decolonize math and start from scratch in a way that can speak to black people. And you're like, what are you talking about? I talked about Isaac Newton and how that was a white experience. I mean, all this nonsense. Well, it's because there's no reality and there's no existing knowledge to be had. Everything is subjective. So there's like white math, black math, gay math, right? It's a total free-for-all, okay? That's second, that's epistemology. Third, human nature, is that third? Yeah, what does it mean to be human? There's no individual at all. So you can see how that's anti-Enlightenment. There is no individual. Group identity is everything, right? And we see that all over the place with intersectionality, right? Your group identity is all that matters. Number 4 is ethically, everyone is collectivist and also egalitarian. We don't have time to talk about egalitarianism right now, but Thomas Sowell, if you want to do more, has written a ton about, what's he call it? It's not extreme egalitarianism, but something like that, and how it's wildly oppressive and it's a terrible thing. It sounds like a good thing, egalitarianism, but it's very, very bad, especially when the progressives take over, which means everyone has to be equal in all ways all the time, especially the oppressed and the marginalized. So it turns up being like how George Orwell wrote in Animal Farm, that all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. You can see this. It was in Seattle, released their document for how they're going to return kids to school. And there's a priority list for who goes to school first. And their first priority is elementary school kids. But then within elementary school kids, how did they word it? It was so ridiculous. It was those who are furthest distanced from educational justice. That's what it was. Those who are furthest distanced from educational justice, students of color. So like no way is that legal, right? Like black kids get priority to go back to school before white kids, but we got to be like maximum egalitarian and we're all equal, but some are more equal than others, right? Anyway, so that's number 4. Number 5, politics. Well, there's no reality. There's no objective truth. There's no universal ethics. So therefore, you are free to use whatever means you want to advocate on behalf of the oppressed. It doesn't matter. Everything goes. Break windows, tear down statues. There are no laws. Everything's oppressive. Doesn't matter. Right? So that's the political makeup of postmodernism. Here's where we are today. This is the philosophical underpinning. That, again, has been laid for decades that now we are living. Congratulations. So why is this good for postmodernists? This is a quote from Paul Moroney. He said, postmodernism became the rhetorical and political weapon of the new socialist movement in the West. If socialism's claims were irrational, right? So if someone makes an argument for socialism and you come back and you say, oh, well, those arguments are irrational. Well, they would reject rationality itself. If their claims were immoral, so if you say, oh, socialism is bad because it's immoral, they would reject notions of universal human morality at all. If their claims were illogical, they would reject logic itself. The cultural Marxists were now able to effectively deflect and dismiss claims of their dogmas, immorality, and irrationality. Right? So you see it all over the place. On race, if you believe that truth exists and that it can be known through logic and reason and scientific inquiry and collection of data, well, then you're racist. And if you say, I'm not racist, well, that's a truth claim. And that's just racist epistemology. So no matter what you do in this philosophy, you are racist. Even if you're an ally, you're still a member of the white identity group, and you're racist because there are no individuals, only collections of people, only groups. This has not only entered into the philosophy departments, obviously, but it started seeping into the education departments in our universities and then everywhere since. And now it is everywhere. In 2018, the Texas State School Board, all right? Like, this makes sense in California, but the Texas State School Board approved the first statewide course in ethnic studies. So right now it's an elective, but it's only an elective for now. Fort Worth specifically teamed up with the Fort Worth School Board, teamed up with Texas Christian University's Comparative Race and Ethnic Studies Department to figure out a way to infuse ethnic studies into the core curriculum for the entire K-12 system, right? So this is how it always works. First, it starts off as an elective, ethnic studies elective. Then they take the principles, the philosophical principles, and apply it to every other course in the entire school. So it's infused in everything. And it starts at high school and then expands down to middle and elementary schools. And it has creeped into every single aspect. Just like yesterday, did we talk about the law? Yeah, yesterday we've quoted Herbert Marcuse and his Gramsci and some people before him, but talked about the long march through the institutions. This is a specific goal, is to have these cultural Marxists go into the different institutions and destroy them from within and take down the rest of society with them. It's a long march through the institutions. It's been going on for decades. It is now thoroughly seeped into our education system, certainly higher education. We all see that. My point right here is to tell you that this is also seeped into the K-12 system for your kids and your grandkids. It's not a question of if this will happen. It's not even a question of when. It's a question of how much has it already done it. How widespread is it? So there you go. 12 minutes, not bad, all right? So there's your Philosophy 101 broad overview of where we are. All right, I want to come back and I want to talk about we'll see this in action. All right, give some we can do this every day. We can give 10 more examples of this in action. And once you fully understand this, you see it everywhere. So we'll do a couple next. True story, Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, so let's see all this in action. And again, we could do a dozen examples every single day. It's all over the place. Do you remember one of the points from the Black Lives Matter group was that we need to abolish the police? And we said, we're going to abolish the police. And they said, well, we don't really want to abolish it. We just want to defund the police. And they said, well, we don't really want to defund the police. We just want social workers to respond to certain 911 calls. I don't know what kind of 911 calls, but the argument was we need more social workers out there instead of evil, terrible, awful police officers. So some cities fell for it, and they started doing this. Now, I think LA and New York were the two big ones. I'm sure there's others. So just, if nothing else, just know that it's never enough. No matter what you do, you can never do enough. Remember, this is a cult with all the same aspects of religion, but no forgiveness and no redemption. So you will never be good enough. Beyonce got in trouble for appropriating African culture with her newest song, okay, right? So you can't be woke enough, it's impossible. And no matter when you cave for anything, they'll always come for something else. So you can never satisfy the mob as well. So stop caving to it. So some cities did though. They said, oh, great idea. We'll get rid of some police officers, we'll have social workers, okay? So this is from one of these woke websites. Replacing cops with social workers does not solve the problem. So it's kind of tough to read. You go to the next one. So let me roll through it quick. Social work is also rooted in anti-blackness. When social work emerged in the United States, this is really interesting. Okay, quick time out here. So this is called ethnohistoricism. The idea is that something today is judged by its founding root. This is why you hear, I've never heard this in my entire life, this argument, until like the last couple of weeks, but the police were founded by out of slave patrols in the South. Now, it's not true. It's a ridiculous proposition. But they say that because, if it was founded for a racist reason, then it's still ingrained and enmeshed with racism still today, and it's got to go. This is what the whole premise of the 1619 Project is. Not defining America from 1776, but defining it from when the first slave came to America. If you can refound America when the first slave came, not even like when the Mayflower came. Like if you want to found America from before 1776, you could pick a good moment, right? You could pick the Mayflower coming over 1620 or whatever. But no, it's got to be the worst possible thing. So when the first slave came over, because if that's the founding of America, then America's racist at its absolute core, and still today. So it's called ethnohistoricism. And here's the same thing here. When social work emerged, no. They don't do it all the time. Because if you wanted to play this game as well, you could say, Planned Parenthood was founded by Margaret Sanger, who was an avowed, flaming racist and eugenicist who wanted to murder all the black people. And she thought the best way to do that was to kill them before they're even born. Therefore, Planned Parenthood is racist. No, that doesn't work. And the reason that doesn't work is because of standpoint theory, which is something we're going to talk about at the end of the show. We'll get to that later. Anyway, an aside. When social work emerged in the United States, social workers had no interest in serving black folks, in part because of an understanding of black folks as innately immoral and incapable of receiving help. And you're thinking, even if that were true, which it's not, but even if that were true, why is that relevant to today? Right? Even if that were true X number of years ago, that doesn't mean that social workers are racist today. But that's one of their arguments they use. When white folks, however, committed crimes or did bad things, it was considered a result of poverty, which meant they could be rehabilitated. Sound familiar? Social work is equally unequipped to address issues of systemic and institutional racism. A study published found that social workers are failing to address institutional racism and relying on micro-level interventions when working with clients of color. Any profession whose roots are so inexorably bound to racist ideologies, and almost all of ours are, cannot fix institutional racism alone. It is dangerous to imply that replacing cops with social workers will undo the impact of a white supremacist society. Next page. There's no healing for our community when we plan to replace one form of policing and violence with an institution that has the ability to recreate policing and violence in new, unimagined forms. We will just continue to inherit new masters. Right? So it can be kind of hard to translate this. Hopefully, even just the segment we just did can bring more of this to light. But they say police are systemically racist, obviously, since they were founded by slave patrols. So they're racist at their core. So we cave, and we're like, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to replace cops with social workers. It's not good enough. It'll never be good enough. Because everything is entirely always about grievance, nonstop, always. It's called critical theory. We're going to talk on Friday. We have an amazing special coming up on Friday about cancel culture. And we're going to talk with James Lindsay, and we're going to talk about the word critical. What does the word critical mean in critical theory? It doesn't mean critical thinking. Quite the opposite. And the very short of it, it just means destroying everything. It means to destroy everything. You must always be aggrieved. That's the worldview mindset. Everything is oppressive and you have to look for it and search for it. The premise is not, is something racist? It's how is it racist? You must look for it all the time. I read an article yesterday, I'm not even kidding, I thought it was satire, about how crosswalk signals are racist. Crosswalks. Because the little guy who says to walk is white. And he had this line, he said, I realize white people like to exert control over nearly everything that everyone does. But since when did this literally include trying to cross the street? And he told this harrowing tale of a friend of his who had to tell her son, a little boy learning how to cross the street, hey son, wait for the little white man to tell you when to cross. And he was so appalled that we have to wait for the white man to. That was like a real thing. So the argument here is that social work at its founding is racist too. And therefore still racist today. Or it was racist at its founding, racist today. Meanwhile, if you disagree, did you notice this? You're dangerous. It's dangerous. Wow. And if you don't agree with them, then you will never undo the impact of our white supremacist society. You're just replacing one master with another. Only and always victims. They don't want the lifeline, all right? They don't want it. Stop throwing it out to them. They don't want to take it. They will not grab the lifeline, whatever you give them. They don't want to be saved. They just want to be agreed. So stop playing the game. Someone asked James Lindsay, they said, James, why do these people bring up things like 50, 100 years ago as evidence of oppression and discrimination today? And James Lindsay, brilliant, he said, picking scabs draws blood. And that's all they want. They just want to draw blood. So they won't let anything ever heal. They just keep picking at it, picking at it, picking at it, so that it's always a problem. David Reboy, one of our friends, tweeted this out. A little flow chart for you. On it, this is if you're white. So first, if you move out, that's white flight. If you move in, that's gentrification. If you don't partake in a culture, you're not inclusive. If you engage in the culture, that's cultural appropriation. If you see color, obviously that's racist. If you don't see color, then you're ignoring racism, and that's racist. No matter what you do, you're in constant double bind. Stop playing. I'll end here because this actually sets up our next segment. Read an article about their story about being in a ton of debt. They were in a ton of debt for like decades, and they finally got out of it. And here is his concluding sentence. Understanding that my experiences with money. Notice how it's my experiences with money, right? See how passive that is? It's not my money or my use of money. It's my experiences with. That's very the knife went in as opposed to I stabbed the guy. It's a very passive way of wording that. So understanding that my experience and understanding, to the use of that word, are tied to a flawed economic system as opposed to a personal failing was life-changing. No, personal failing. Or mistakes. I don't say you're not a failure because you were bad with money, you made bad decisions with money. You're not a failure, but you made mistakes. So the sooner you own up to that, the more your life's gonna change. Life is hard, make good decisions. You make good decisions. Oh, but the world is systematic, blah, blah, blah. No, you make good decisions. Mark Manson just tweeted out yesterday, he said, he made a list, he said, things you can never change. The past, the world, other people. What you can always change, your attitude, your assumptions, your beliefs, which then therefore affect your decisions. Focus on what you can control. And that is our segue into personal responsibility. Also next. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, I want to talk about personal responsibility here. Quick, back it up just a second. I want to give a little credit to the mayor of Atlanta. She was doing a press conference about that 8-year-old girl who was shot and killed the other day. And she said some good stuff. She said, this girl was shot and killed last night, and it was not by the hands of police officers. The reality is, these aren't police officers shooting people on the streets of Atlanta. These are members of the community shooting each other. If you want people to take us seriously, and you don't want to lose this movement, then we can't lose each other. You can't blame this on a police officer. You can't say this is about criminal justice reform. We got to stop this. We're doing each other more harm than any police officer on this force. We've had over 75 shootings in the city over the past several weeks. You can't blame this on the Atlanta police. So I'll give a little credit where it's due to Mayor Bottoms there. But then last night, she blamed the president for all these shootings. So whatever. I want to play this clip here of Shelby Steele. I wanted to play a clip of Glenn Lowry and Shelby Steele, but we'll play the Glenn Lowry one tomorrow for the sake of time, because the Shelby Steele one is so classic. Here's why I want to play these men. First of all, they're brilliant and they're right. So period, end of story. That's all that really matters. But I particularly want to play these two black intellectuals for a reason. So Glenn Loury, he was 33 years old. I forget when this was, back in the 80s. At 33, he was the first black tenured economics professor at Harvard. Now he's at Brown. And Shelby Steele's over at Stanford. These are brilliant men. And it's important because one of the tactics, remember last week or 2 weeks ago, I told the story of one of my friends who was able to deprogram someone who was in the Black Lives Matter cult. And we talked about the 5 steps he did to do that. And one of the middle steps, was to get people to realize that not all black people think the same way. I know it's crazy, right? But this is one of the tricks that Black Lives Matter uses, is to get white people to think that all black people are unanimous in their opinions on how you're a terrible person and this is a terrible country. So you can dismantle that very simply by just talking about and showing clips of some black intellectuals who logically, sanely, calmly, and academically disagree with what's happening today. So this is Shelby Steele.
What do people do with freedom when they don't know how to handle it? They reinvent their oppression, even as it has faded away. They make it up in their mind all over again. Racism is around every corner. There is systemic racism. There's structural racism. There are microaggressions, and there's white privilege. Rather than say, oh my goodness, we in fact, it is over. Our oppression is over with. We really are free people. We scream to high heavens that Steele is crazy, that it's laughable. Can't you see racism everywhere? White supremacy is just infused into literally the air of America, so that black people are, well, what is this longing for an identity, a black identity grounded in victimization, is a longing for an excuse to not accept the challenge of freedom. It is a way to escape that challenge. It comes with a judgmentalism. It judges you. If you don't know how to thrive in freedom, it means that you are at fault. You are, in the worst word you can use regarding blacks, you are inferior. It's a chilling idea, but it's at the heart. It is the heart of the shock of freedom. Because freedom now is saying you can't use oppression as an excuse anymore. If you're not doing well, it's not because of oppression. For goodness sakes, we've got affirmative action. We've got everything to help you. If you're not doing well now, it's on you.
Wow. How about that line? Longing for he said black identity because that was the topic they were talking about, but it doesn't matter. Just take race out of it. Longing for an identity grounded in victimization is a longing for an excuse to not accept the challenge of freedom. Whoa. So people reinvent their oppression even when it's faded away. Gosh, that's so good. We quoted in the last segment that person, again, who wrote that article about how they were really bad with money and they've been in a ton of debt. And that last sentence, that I finally have understood that my experiences with money, very passive, are tied to a flawed economic system as opposed to a personal failing. It's like, no, personal failing. So that quote there reminded me of Booker T. Washington. So Booker T. Washington, in his autobiography, Up From Slavery, you should definitely read it, tells a story. He was 9 years old when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, and his master called all the slaves into the big house. And some government official read the Emancipation Proclamation, and all the slaves were there. And Booker was 9. And this is what he said. He said, "The wild rejoicing on the part of the emancipated colored people lasted for a brief period. For I noticed by the time they returned to their cabins, there was a change in their feelings. The great responsibility of being free of having charge of themselves, of having to think and plan for themselves and their children, seemed to take possession of them. In a few hours, the great questions with which the Anglo-Saxon race had been grappling for centuries had been thrown upon these people to be solved. These were the questions of a home, a living, a rearing of children, education, citizenship, and the establishment and support of churches. Was it any wonder that within a few hours, the wild rejoicing ceased, and a feeling of deep gloom seemed to pervade the slave quarters? To some, it seemed that now that they were in actual possession of it, freedom was a more serious thing than they'd expected to find it. I've never thought of that before. I guess I just imagine that when these slaves were freed, they were just overjoyed and that was it. But Booker T tells a different story. Right? Overjoyed and then, whoa, now what do we do? And by the way, they crushed it for the next 80 years or so, whatever, until the 1960s when the government screwed it up, but that's a different story. We're all faced with this question all the time. I want to move away from race. It's not just about race. There are forces all over the place among white and every melanin-skinned tone there is. Forces everywhere telling you that you can't do it. And not only that you can't do it, but you shouldn't have to do it. You're entitled and life is hard, but it's the man who's against you and you're a victim. There have always been, always will be forces telling you that you can't do this freedom thing. And you shouldn't even have to, that people owe you something. It's always been around, and it's true for everyone. But there's never been anything like these race hustlers picking at the scab of racism, keeping it bleeding. It's like a Munchausen by proxy syndrome going on. Yesterday on the show, we talked about personal responsibility. We quoted Theodore Dalrymple, who's one of my favorite writers. Love that guy. And he said it's a mistake. His book's called, he has a bunch of books, From the Bottom or Up, something about the bottom, Life at the Bottom. And one of his chapters ends with the line that it's a mistake to assume that all men want to be free. You want to be free. I want to be free. So we assume everyone wants to be free. It's a mistake because freedom requires responsibility. And for a lot of people, that is too high of a cost to pay. So what's one way out? How do we get out of this? Because this, today's show, and we're going to a lot more talk about the philosophy and the worldview that we're living in today. But I want to provide an alternative too, right? Because that's something the left's not doing, right? They're just tearing down statues. They're not ever talking about what statues they want to build. They're not building anything else. They're not building anything. Just tearing everything down. That's the whole premise of everything they do. So I want to make sure as we try to tear their philosophy down and their worldview down, that we replace it with something that's true. Because the truth's there. It's not. We don't have to reinvent anything. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's a great relief. So what's one way out of this? Well, I'll let Thomas Sowell tell you. Here it is.
You say the Chinese succeed because they outwork everyone else.
Oh, yes.
Is it that simple?
In a sense, yes. That if you put in enormous amounts of work, you're going to have a tremendous advantage over people who don't. A study was done in San Francisco schools to show Asians, blacks, whites, Hispanics, and how they score in various fields, and mathematics in particular. And there were vast differences, for example, between the Asians and blacks in terms of how many got high math grades. What struck me was that for both the Asians and the Africans, the number of hours that you spent working or doing homework in math was almost identical with the same percentage who got high grades in math. So that whether you're black or Chinese, if you spend an awful lot of time on the math, you're going to be doing better than the person who's not. And although there were great disparities, the disparities were differences in how much time you spent on math homework.
So one way out of this is hard work, and I love his answer to the question. Dr. Sowell, is it that simple? Yes. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. So on Friday, I'm so excited for our special on Friday. We're going to talk about cancel culture, and we have 3 amazing guests. One of them is James Lindsay. He's got this new website, newdiscourses.com. You have to check that out every single day. And he breaks down all the woke speak and the philosophy of everything that's going on today. It's absolutely genius and brilliant. I'm super grateful for it. So we're going to talk to him on Friday. He's got a new book coming out too. And on the cover of the book, it's like sunglasses, but the lenses are the rainbow flag. And someone asked, why? Why is that the image you used? And it's because that's the analogy they have for something called standpoint theory. And this is something you may hear. If you don't hear the word standpoint theory, you definitely see it in action all the time. And it'll be very clear in the next 8 minutes. So standpoint theory started with this feminist named Sandra Harding. She wrote this book called The Feminist Standpoint Theory Reader. And this goes back to the 70s, which again is my main point out whenever we talk about this philosophy is to know this is not something that was just made up yesterday. This has been going back for decades. Same thing with standpoint theory. So it actually goes back to Marx, but everything does. But anyway, so the idea is, the Marxist theory is that everyone is either the oppressor or the oppressed. Everyone is either a master or a slave. The master has only one perspective because he's a master in a master's world. Right? The slave has 2 perspectives because the slave is a slave in a master's world. So the slave can see 2 different perspectives. You may have heard the term double consciousness, but that's not even enough anymore because now you can be the member of multiple oppressed groups. So now it's called kaleidoscopic consciousness. I'm not kidding, these are real terms. Kaleidoscopic consciousness, because you can see so many different colors. Where does color come in? Well, when they describe this, they use colors. So if you're a straight white male, which is the worst, you're a master in a master's world, you only see in gray. If you're, let's say, gay, then you can see in red. If you're black, you can see green. If you're transgender, then you can see blue, right? And the more groups you're in, the more oppressed groups, the more perspectives you have, the more kaleidoscopic your perspective is, and therefore the more valid your perspective is. And the flip of having a valid perspective is also how more invalid your perspective is, you straight white guy. So if you are a member of an oppressed group, let's say you're Hispanic. We don't hear a lot about Hispanics anymore lately, right? They haven't been getting their press lately. Let's say you're Hispanic. Your lived experience as a member of that group in a white supremacist world, they say, gives you access to additional truths that white people can't possibly understand. Therefore, white people must shut up and listen. You, a member of the master class, can only have the master's views. That's all you can ever have. You can never get it. This is where you get the word internalize. Actually, so this goes back to the very first segment we did. We talked about we did a broad philosophical overview. And by the way, if you download the app, the First TV app in the App Store on your phone, you can go back and listen to all the shows on demand. But we did an overview, a little philosophy 101 of pre-enlightenment, enlightenment, and postmodern, which is anti-enlightenment where we are today. And one of the aspects is about human nature and how pre-enlightenment, you were born original sin. Enlightenment is tabula rasa. And today, anti-enlightenment, you are born, because of the social structures created today, you are born racist, if you're white, because you have internalized everything. Everything is a social construct, and you've internalized everything as you've grown up, no matter what. This is why you've heard maybe internalized dominance, internalized oppression, internalized racism, internalized sexism, internalized misogyny, internalized ableism, internalized transphobia. You can't not be these things if you're white. You are all of them all the time. It's your own sort of original sin. So you must shut up and listen. Now you're thinking, hold on, Slater, what about me? I'm black and conservative, for instance. Well, your perspective doesn't count because your perspective is not, and this is the word they use, authentic. They use it. You're not authentic. What does that mean? Authentic means that your perspective must align with Marxist ideology. This is what they mean by the word diversity, right? So diversity doesn't mean what we think it means. When we think diversity, we think it means, oh, people from diverse backgrounds and different viewpoints and different perspectives. Does not mean that. What they mean is people of different oppressed groups with a singularity of thought, right? So when your work sends you an email, your HR department says, oh, we're having a diversity, inclusion, and equity seminar that all white people have to go to, which is what the city of Seattle did the other day, and we can talk about that tomorrow. They don't mean, like, none of those words mean what you think. Diversity doesn't mean diversity. It means singularity. It means uniformity of thought, because only the authentic Marxist thoughts are allowed. Only the authentic woke voices are allowed. If you're black and conservative or whatever, you don't count. This is from James Lindsay, who again, we're gonna talk to on Friday. He says, it's yet another justification within critical theory for only people who agree with critical theory to be considered knowledgeable authorities, which is then used to silence opposition and install professionals in positions of authority and power based on group identity alone. So this is all a way to silence you. You will hear it in action as, oh, you can't possibly understand. Or you don't know what it's like being whatever. And it's true. And that's like, with most of this stuff, there's a kernel of truth to it. Like the example we used earlier of, they say police were founded by the slave patrols of the South. No, there were slave patrols in the South, right? But the evolution, the dots don't connect, but like there's a kernel of truth to it always. So yeah, it's true, I can't fully understand. But here's the rub. The goal isn't from these woke people. The goal is never to help you or anyone understand. It's only a tool to silence and cancel. There's never a quest to find truth, because to the Marxists, there is no truth. There's only everyone's truth, which is a way to say there's no truth. All there is oppression, and you are the oppressor. So you must be silenced. There's more and more examples every day. If you haven't already, do I have a minute to share this? Let me do it real quick. Someone called in to my radio show yesterday and said, Slater, if I say, someone says, Slater, you're racist, and you say, no, I'm not, you could say, you're making a moral judgment claim on me by saying I'm racist and therefore bad, and your philosophy says there's no such thing as moral judgments. Now, to a normal person, that may work, right? But if someone's well-versed in this woke critical theory, they're gonna come back and say, they're gonna use standpoint theory against you and say, well, it's not that there's no such thing as moral judgments. It's that you can't have moral judgments. You, the white straight man, can't make moral judgments because you only see the world in grays. You don't see the truth like I do. All right, so that's how it's used. If you haven't already been told, you will be told to sit down and shut up. The question is, will you? And that's our show. See you tomorrow. Do it again. Spread the word.